What happens when a Hollywood legend sits down for what should be a simple morning talk show interview, only to face an attack so personal, so disrespectful, that he does something no guest has ever done before? It only took 39 seconds of Joy Behar's commentary for one of the most respected actors in film history to stand up, remove his microphone, and walk off the set in front of millions of viewers. The morning started like any other episode of The View. The audience filled the studio, cameras were positioned, and the panel sat ready at their curved table. Whoopi Goldberg was in her usual center seat, with Joy Behar to her right, Sunny Hostin next to Joy, Sarah Haynes on the other side, and Alyssa Farah Griffin rounding out the panel. The energy in the room felt normal, maybe even a little excited. After all, Clint Eastwood does not do many talk show appearances. This was supposed to be a big get for the show. When Clint walked onto the stage, the audience erupted. People stood up, clapping and cheering. He wore a simple gray button-down shirt and dark pants, his silver hair combed back neatly. He moved with that characteristic, slow, confident walk that had defined so many of his film roles. He waved politely to the crowd, a slight smile on his weathered face. Whoopi stood to greet him, shaking his hand warmly. "Welcome, welcome. It is so great to have you here," Whoopi said, gesturing to the guest chair positioned at the end of the table. Clint nodded. "Thanks for having me." He sat down, and a production assistant quickly attached a small microphone to his shirt. The applause died down. The cameras moved into position. Whoopi shuffled her note cards and smiled at him. "So, Clint, you have a new film coming out, and from what I hear, you directed it, starred in it, and even composed some of the music. Is that true?" Clint nodded slowly. "That is right. I have always liked being involved in all parts of the process. Keeps me busy." The audience laughed lightly. Sunny Hostin leaned forward, smiling. "It must be incredible to have such a long career. You have been making films for what, 60 years now?" "Something like that," Clint replied. "I do not keep count anymore." More laughter. The conversation felt easy, comfortable. Sarah Haynes chimed in next. "Your movies have this timeless quality to them. What do you think is the secret to that?" Clint thought for a moment. "I think people respond to honesty. If you tell a story honestly, without trying to trick the audience or talk down to them, they will connect with it. That has always been my approach." Whoopi nodded approvingly. "I love that. Honesty in storytelling. That is something we could use more of." Alyssa Farah Griffin smiled. "And you have played so many iconic roles. Do you have a favorite?" Clint shrugged slightly. "I do not know if I have a favorite. Each role was right for that time in my life. I have been lucky to work on projects I believed in. Everything was going smoothly. The panel seemed genuinely interested. The audience was engaged. Clint was relaxed, answering questions in his typical, understated way. But then Joy Behar, who had been sitting quietly up until this point, suddenly spoke up. Her tone was different from the others. Sharper, more pointed. "So Clint, let me ask you something," Joy said, leaning back in her chair with her arms crossed. "You've made a lot of movies about tough guys, cowboys, cops, guys with guns. Do you ever think about the message that sends, especially in today's world?" The atmosphere in the studio shifted. You could feel it. Clint turned his head slightly to look at Joy. His expression did not change much, but his eyes narrowed just a bit. "What do you mean?" he asked calmly. Joy waved her hand dismissively. "I mean, all this glorification of violence, the lone wolf with a gun solving all his problems. Do not you think that is a little outdated? Maybe even dangerous?" Whoopi jumped in quickly, trying to smooth things over. "Well, Joy, I think Clint's movies are more nuanced than that. They are about character and morality." But Joy was not backing down. She shook her head. "I am just saying, we live in a time where gun violence is a huge problem, and here we have movies that make it look cool. I think that is worth talking about." Clint sat very still. He took a slow breath. "My films are not about glorifying violence. They are about consequences, about people facing difficult choices. If you actually watch them, you would see that." Joy let out a short laugh. "Oh, I have watched them, believe me, and what I see is a lot of shooting and not a lot of talking." Sunny Hostin tried to intervene. "I think what makes Clint's films powerful is that they do show consequences. His characters often struggle with what they have done." Joy turned to Sunny. "Come on, Sunny. Let us be real here. These are revenge fantasies. The bad guys get shot, the good guy walks away. It is simple." Clint's jaw tightened. "It is not simple at all, and if that is all you took from my work, then you missed the point entirely." The audience was silent now. This was not the friendly chat they had expected. Sarah Haynes looked uncomfortable. Alyssa Farrah Griffin glanced at Whoopi as if asking for help, but Joy was just getting started. And another thing, Joy continued, her voice rising slightly. You talked to that empty chair at that political convention. Remember that? What was that about? Were you trying to be funny, or was that just strange? The room went completely still. Even the camera operators seemed to freeze. Whoopi closed her eyes for a second, as if bracing for what was coming. Sunny put her hand to her forehead. Sarah looked down at the table. Clint stared at Joy. His face was calm, but there was something in his eyes. Something cold. That was a personal expression, he said quietly. I was making a point in my own way. Joy laughed again. Louder this time. A point? It looked like you were losing it on stage. Honestly, I thought maybe you were confused. That was it. That was the moment. Alyssa Farrah Griffin gasped quietly. Whoopi held up her hand. Joy, come on. That is uncalled for. But Joy kept going. I am just being honest. We are supposed to have honest conversations here, right? So let me be honest. I think that moment was embarrassing, and I think some of your movies have not aged well. They feel like relics from a different time. Clint did not raise his voice. He did not get angry. He just reached up, slowly unclipped the microphone from his shirt, and placed it on the table in front of him. The small thud of the microphone hitting the table echoed through the silent studio. Whoopi leaned forward. Clint, wait. You do not have to. But Clint was already standing. He looked at Whoopi, then at Sunny, Sarah, and Alyssa. He nodded at each of them. Then he turned to Joy. He did not say a word. He just looked at her for a long, heavy moment. Joy's smile faded. She suddenly looked less confident. Then Clint turned and walked toward the exit. His footsteps were the only sound in the entire studio. The cameras followed him as he moved past the audience, past the stunned production crew, and out through the stage door. He never looked back. For several seconds, no one spoke. Whoopi finally broke the silence. Well, that just happened. Joy tried to laugh it off. Oh, come on. He is being dramatic. But Sunny was shaking her head. Joy, that was way over the line. You attacked him personally. Sarah nodded. That was really uncomfortable to watch. Alyssa added quietly. He is a guest. We are supposed to treat guests with respect. Joy threw up her hands. What? I was asking legitimate questions. If he cannot handle that, maybe he should not come on talk shows. Whoopi turned to her, and her voice was firm. There is a difference between asking tough questions and being disrespectful. What you said about him being confused, that was disrespectful. The audience started murmuring. Some people were shaking their heads. Others looked angry. Joy looked around, suddenly realizing that the room had turned against her. Joy started. But Whoopi cut her off. We need to go to commercial, Whoopi said, looking directly at the camera. We will be right back. The show cut away, but the damage was done. Backstage, producers were scrambling. Clint Eastwood had left the building entirely. Security confirmed he got into a car and drove away. There was no chance of bringing him back. The rest of the episode felt awkward and tense. Joy tried to justify her comments during the commercial break, but the other hosts were not having it. When they came back from commercial, Whoopi addressed the audience directly. Look, things got heated there. That is what happens sometimes when you have real conversations. But I want to say, on behalf of the show, we have enormous respect for Clint Eastwood and his body of work. He is a legend, and he deserved better than what just happened. Joy sat with her arms crossed, looking defiant but saying nothing. Sunny spoke next. I just want to add that I think Joy's comments were out of line. You can disagree with someone's work or their politics without making it personal. And suggesting that someone is confused or losing it, especially an older guest, that is ageist and it is wrong. Sarah nodded in agreement. I feel terrible about how that went. Clint came here in good faith, and he was blindsided. Alyssa chimed in. I hope he knows that not all of us felt that way. I have so much respect for him. Joy finally spoke, but her tone was defensive. I am not going to apologize for speaking my mind. That is what this show is about. Whoopi turned to her sharply. Speaking your mind is one thing, being rude is another. And what you did was rude, Joy. The tension between the hosts was palpable. The rest of the episode limped along, but no one was really paying attention to the other segments. Everyone was still thinking about what had happened with Clint. In the studio audience, people were whispering to each other. Some were angry. One woman stood up during a commercial break and shouted toward the stage, "You should apologize to him." Security had to calm her down. The energy in the room had completely soured. When the show finally ended, the hosts walked off the stage without their usual friendly banter. Joy headed straight to her dressing room. Whoopi, Sunny, Sarah, and Alyssa gathered together in the hallway, talking in low voices. Production assistants rushed around, trying to figure out how to handle the fallout. Within minutes, clips of the confrontation started appearing online. Social media exploded. People were outraged. Comments flooded in from all directions. Most of them were defending Clint and criticizing Joy. She was completely out of line, one person wrote. He handled that with so much class, another commented. Joy owes him an apology, someone else demanded. But Joy did not apologize. In fact, when reporters reached out to her later, she doubled down. She released a statement saying, "I ask tough questions. That is my job. If someone cannot handle that, maybe they should not be in the public eye." That statement only made things worse. Even people who usually agreed with Joy on political issues were saying she had gone too far this time. The video of Clint removing his microphone and walking off became one of the most viewed clips of the year. People watched it over and over, analyzing every moment, every facial expression. Whoopi gave an interview a few days later where she addressed the incident more fully. "Look, we are a talk show where we have different opinions. That is the format. But there is a way to express disagreement respectfully, and that did not happen. I have reached out to Clint personally to apologize on behalf of the show. He is a class act, and he deserved better." Sunny also spoke publicly. "I was sitting right there, and I could see how uncomfortable he was. Joy kept pushing and pushing, and then to suggest he was confused? That crossed every line. I told her so during the commercial break, and I will say it again now. It was wrong." Sarah and Alyssa both posted on social media expressing their regret over how the interview went. Sarah wrote, "I'm so sorry to Clint Eastwood for what happened. You came to our show as a guest, and you were treated poorly. That is on us to fix." Alyssa added, "I grew up watching your films, and you are a hero of mine. I am deeply sorry for how that interview went." Meanwhile, Joy remained silent on social media. She stopped posting entirely for several days, which was unusual for her. Behind the scenes, there were reportedly heated discussions between Joy and the show's producers. Some sources claimed that producers were furious and considered disciplinary action. Others said Joy threatened to quit if she was forced to apologize. The audience reaction was swift and loud. Ratings for The View dropped in the following weeks. Advertisers started getting nervous. Fan pages dedicated to the show filled with angry comments. Petitions circulated online, calling for Joy to be removed from the panel. One petition gathered hundreds of thousands of signatures in just a few days. But through all of this, Clint Eastwood said nothing publicly. He did not give interviews about the incident. He did not post on social media. He did not release a statement. He simply went back to his life, working on his film, spending time with his family. That silence, that refusal to engage with the drama, only made people respect him more. He had made his point by walking away. He did not need to say anything else. The contrast could not have been clearer. On one side, you had Joy Behar, defensive and defiant, refusing to acknowledge any wrongdoing, surrounded by controversy and criticism. On the other side, you had Clint Eastwood, quiet and dignified, letting his actions speak for themselves, earning praise for his restraint and class. Other celebrities started weighing in. Several actors and directors came to Clint's defense. One famous director tweeted, "Clint Eastwood is a master filmmaker and a gentleman. What happened on that show was disgraceful." An actor who had worked with Clint posted, "I have known Clint for 20 years. He is one of the most thoughtful, intelligent people I have ever met. To suggest otherwise is insulting and ignorant." Even people who disagreed with Clint's politics defended him. One liberal commentator wrote, "I do not share Clint Eastwood's political views, but what Joy Behar did was indefensible. You can challenge someone's ideas without attacking them personally. She failed that basic test of decency." The incident became a cultural flashpoint. It was discussed on other talk shows, dissected in think pieces, debated on news programs. Everyone had an opinion, but the consensus was overwhelming. Joy had gone too far, and Clint had handled it with grace. Back on The View, the atmosphere remained tense. The hosts continued doing the show, but the dynamic between them had shifted. Joy and Whoopi, who had been friends for years, were noticeably cooler toward each other. Sunny made pointed comments during shows that seemed aimed at Joy. The chemistry that had once made the show work felt broken. Audience members who attended tapings reported that Joy seemed less confident, less willing to speak up on certain topics. It was as if she knew she was on thin ice. but she still refused to apologize. Whenever the subject came up, she would deflect or change the topic. Whoopi tried to move the show past the controversy, but it was not easy. Every time they had a big guest, people wondered if something similar would happen. Some guests reportedly asked for assurances that they would be treated respectfully before agreeing to appear. The show's reputation had taken a hit. As weeks passed, the intensity of the backlash began to fade, as these things usually do. But the incident was not forgotten. It became part of The View's history, a moment that defined that era of the show, and it became part of Joy Behar's legacy. A reminder of what happens when a host forgets that guests are people deserving of respect, not targets for personal attacks. For Clint Eastwood, the incident only added to his legend. The image of him calmly removing his microphone and walking away became iconic. It was a moment that perfectly captured who he was. A man who did not need to argue, did not need to defend himself with words, because his actions said everything. He had spent decades earning respect through his work, and he was not going to let one talk show host diminish that. The whole episode served as a lesson about the importance of respect, about the difference between challenging ideas and attacking people, about knowing when to walk away from a situation that has become toxic. Clint Eastwood knew. He saw what was happening, recognized that it was not going to get better, and made the decision to leave. That decision showed more strength and character than any argument could have. In the end, the confrontation on The View was not really about politics or movies or guns. It was about how we treat each other, especially when we disagree. It was about recognizing that being on television does not give you license to be cruel. It was about understanding that asking tough questions is fine, but crossing into personal insults is not. Joy Behar learned that lesson the hard way, in front of millions of people. Whether she actually internalized it is another question, but everyone else who watched certainly learned something. They learned that there are still people in this world who will not tolerate disrespect, who will stand up, or rather walk away, when they are mistreated. They learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to participate in ugliness. And they learned that Clint Eastwood, even at his age, even after all these years, is still exactly who he has always been. A man of principle, a man of action, a man who does not waste words. He walked onto that stage as a legend, and he walked off as something even greater. An example of how to maintain dignity in the face of disrespect. The cameras captured him walking away, his back straight, his pace steady, never once looking back at the chaos he was leaving behind. And in that moment, he reminded everyone watching why he has remained such an enduring figure in American culture. Not because of his movies, though they are remarkable, not because of his awards, though they are numerous, but because of who he is as a person, someone who knows his worth and does not need validation from people who do not respect him. That 39-second moment when Joy Behar attacked him personally, when she crossed the line from journalist to antagonist, it revealed everything about both of them. It showed Joy at her worst, petty and mean-spirited, more interested in scoring points than having a real conversation. And it showed Clint at his best, composed and principled, willing to walk away rather than engage with hostility. The audience in that studio, the viewers at home, everyone who saw what happened, they all witnessed something rare and important. They saw what happens when disrespect meets dignity. They saw what happens when someone who thinks they have power because they have a microphone runs into someone who has actual power because they have character. And they saw very clearly who came out on top. It was not even close.